Welcome to the Midweek End Times News, Trends, and Prophecy Update. Today's date is February 24th, 2016. And as we mentioned in the previous times that we have together, there's so many things that are happening in the world today. We want to make sure you're informed, you're equipped, you have information. And as we've said before, some of this articles and information that we share with you are great witnessing tools to talk to other people who may not be believers, but it's an opportunity to keep them informed on what's going on in the events of the world, and also hopefully to have an opportunity to share the gospel message with them. As people have been paying attention to quite a few reports that are coming out concerning Syria and this ceasefire, according to the Jerusalem Post on Monday, had this article about a ceasefire in Syria that is set for Saturday at midnight. So the report goes on to talk about how the United States and Russia have agreed to on a plan to pause the fighting in Syria's civil war at the stroke of midnight on Saturday, February 27th, marking the first serious effort to broker a ceasefire in the conflict since it began 5 years ago. The plan requires two main warring parties, Syria's embattled president, Bashar Assad, and a loose alliance of rebel fighting groups that are trying to get him out, and to agree to a ceasefire by noon on Friday local time, and the truce would go into effect at midnight. So according to a joint U.S.-Russian statement, the two sides must agree fully to implement a UN Security Council resolution that was passed in December, which kind of lays out this political roadmap for an ending to war. To cease attacks with any weapons, including rockets, mortars, or anti-tank guided missiles against one another, and to allow access for humanitarian aid to people in need nationwide, and the use of proportionate force of the pause and the fighting periodically falters. So the parties to the conflict must agree to refrain from seeking and acquiring new territory at the expense of one another. UN-designated terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria and the Islamic State are excluded from the cessation of hostilities, which only protect those parties in Syria's conflict that have indicated their commitment to and acceptance of its terms. So it's going to be interesting how all this is going to play out, and how the sustainability of the ceasefire, if there's more issues that are going to develop because of it. Time will tell, but again, this is one of those reports that came out, so it'd be interesting to just watch what is going to happen. On another report in Lebanon, the Saudi Arabian tells its citizens to leave Lebanon immediately because of Iran hostilities. This report came out of the IB Times, and there's quite a few other news sources that share the same type of information. How Saudi Arabia has issued a travel ban on Lebanon, urging people not to travel to the country and telling those who are already there to leave, to get out of there. Any Saudis remaining in Lebanon have been urged to contact the Saudi embassy in Beirut, which will be able to provide care for their safety. As this next presidential election's coming up, it's also interesting to see the position of where some of these candidates stand, from the Republican side to the Democrat side. And a report came out of the Israeli Times where Clinton goes on to say that Trump and Cruz misses the mark on Israel. But what this report really talks about is how Clinton is really wanting to see a Palestinian state, and that is kind of something that as we said time and time again, a vote for the Palestinian state is a vote against Israel, because Palestine wants to eliminate and wipe Israel off the map. That is their goal. That is their agenda. She is proposing for a two-state solution, which, as we know, is never going to work. It's not like the Palestinians don't have enough land in the whole Middle East. They've got plenty of land there. Why do they need to take over the land of Israel? They don't. But this is the goal of a two-state solution. If they were to recognize and to try to get the Palestinian state implemented, then it would continue to infiltrate and throw more rockets and more violence against Israel. That is the goal of the Palestinians. But it's interesting to see from a political point of view, those who would so-called be elected into the presidency of the United States, that with the positions of where these candidates stand, are they going to be an ally for Israel, or they're going to be against Israel, as this current Obama administration is? Onto a different issue, same location in the Middle East, and dealing with Damascus. According to RT website, there was an explosion that killed more than 80 plus people, and over 180 plus were injured as multiple blasts hit Damascus suburb. As we mentioned time and again, as Isaiah 17 talks about the destruction of Damascus, we're seeing that chip away week by week, month by month, the destruction of Damascus, and really will be the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. But in this report talked about how there's this series of explosions in the capital there in Damascus, where all these people were killed and injured. The first massive explosion was a car bomb that targeted a busy street, a school street, by the way, during rush hour. And according to a Syrian state news agency, the blast was followed by two explosions allegedly carried out by suicide bombers wearing explosive belts targeted the crowds that gathered at the site of the tragedy. The attack claimed the lives, like we said, over 83 plus people or so, according to the local media, while over 180 were injured. And another report came out, speaking of suicide missions and bombing, out of the dailymail.com, and this was sad, it's tragic to hear this, to see this, but this is the agenda of Islam. Is this the 11-year-old junior jihadist kisses his daddy before blowing himself up in a suicide mission. And there's different pictures, and there, you can even see as the boy drives off, and then in the distance you see this huge explosion in the distance where the car goes off. But so sad, so tragic to hear and to read how boys 11 years old would do such a thing and kill themselves. And it just breaks your heart as a father, as a Christian, to see this happening, the lives destroyed. And we're going to see and hear more of these reports coming out each week, each month, each year. More of this stuff's going to happen. And the question is, why would anyone want to follow a hateful, violent, senseless religion like this? It's not peaceful. Why do they claim it's peaceful when they're blowing people up, when they're destroying lives, when there's such suicide bombings and terrorism and all this violence? How can they say it is a peaceful religion? Anyways, on to another issue. Locally here in Australia, out of the Brett Bart report and also the Australian.com and many other websites that have the same sort of story that took place the other day, how an Australian teen wife charged on terrorism offences. So the Australian police on Tuesday charged an 18-year-old woman on terrorism-related offences 1 month after her reported husband faced similar charges. Her husband was facing court on 3 accounts of collecting documents likely to face terrorist acts and reporting, including advice on carrying out stabbing and making a bomb. But this young lady from a suburban in Sydney was arrested on Tuesday. And there are several other teens charged in recent months over alleged plots according to the Australian officials, becoming increasingly concerned about homegrown terrorism. So these aren't just reports that we read that are happening overseas or in the Middle East or in Europe or in America. This is happening here in Australia, these type of reports. And so even just last October, a 15-year-old boy was shot by a civilian employee outside the police headquarters in Western Sydney before being killed by an exchange gunfire with other officers. And so more of these things are going to happen homegrown. So we need to be paying attention to where we're at, what's going on, who we're around. And but it's just sad to see how such a young generation are being deceived into this sort of religion. On to kind of a separate issue in dealing with tolerance and intolerance more so. The Muslims can get away with whatever they want and how governments are bowing down to their agenda. In a Dutch branch of the anti-Islamic organization movement, and this report came out of the Brett Barr report on Monday, how Dutch PEGIDA leader, PEGIDA leader, he was arrested for failing to take off a pig's hat. So he was arrested for refusing. There was a kind of a child's hat that he had on that was shaped like a pig. And he was leading a demonstration in this town that were having plans to build several migrant centers capable of accommodating close to 1,400 plus people. So quite a few other people are carrying all kinds of other signs and Dutch flags. And Saturday's protest comes as senior figures in the Netherlands have become increasingly skeptical about the huge number of migrants pouring into the continent and can fully integrate into a wider society. The thing is, and as they're starting to notice, that these people, these migrants, this Islamic invasion is not going to infiltrate into society. They want to take over the society. One of the leaders slammed the liberal left ideology that has dominated the country's thinking for so many decades. And he says this, quote, "We in the Netherlands have for so long been intolerant toward ourselves. We have tolerated intolerance toward our values. This is obviously very stupid. We should be tolerant of that girl with a headscarf in class who has her own faith, but not when she says to her, you must also put on a headscarf. If you want to live here, then you have to keep our values," he said. "Those who want to live in an Islamic society where women are second-class citizens, gay people are denounced, and where other faiths are not allowed or should go, live in Saudi Arabia or something like that." Or other countries, and that's the thing. There's so many other countries that these people can go to that have the same culture, same religion as them. Why infiltrate a Western culture or other countries with your ideology when that's not what they want? The Dutch people now have to stand up for their values if they want to preserve them for future generations, he said, and that goes for every country. Also here in Australia, another report that came out, and this is tragic, but we're seeing it so common within the supermarkets and now in the military that 1/3 of meals given to Australian troops have to be halal-certified, despite the fact there's only 100 Muslims serving in the defense force. And you see it in the supermarkets that all this meat is halal and all the different types of food. So why is the Australian people and the government and all these supermarkets caving in to just a small number of people? Why do the rest of civilization and society have to suffer because a handful of people, especially here in the military, when you only have 100 people and you've got tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of other within the defense force? Why do they have to suffer to eat halal meat when you only have a small pocket? If you have such a small number of these people, have them go to a special store that caters to this stuff, or have the military have special food delivered to these people instead of having them have to accommodate everyone else. Anyways, but this is one of the things that is going on here in Australia, and I know other parts of the world are struggling the same way. Another issue that does your head in as nearly 90,000 illegal immigrant criminals released last year, according to Brett Bart report on Monday that had this information released, and how these are criminal threats that are released to society last year instead of being deported. So the actions were because of the Obama administration, which is a no-brainer. You got a guy here who can't keep track of all these illegals. He lets these types off. He's importing and bringing in hundreds of thousands of Muslims from the Middle East. He's trying to close Gitmo, and he's released others, for no apparent reason, and just release them back to other terrorist organizations. But that's the goal of the Obama administration, to destroy America, not to make America great. Anyways, the policies of the Obama administration continue on. Jessica Vaughn, a director of policy studies at the Center of Migration Studies, told the Washington Examiner that based on the Internal Migration Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, which is the long form of that, in 2015, they encountered 152,393 criminal illegal immigrants, but charged just 64,116 with immigration violation. Another 88,000 of those illegal migrant criminals encountered by ICE were not placed in deportation proceedings. So they're just allowing the criminal activity to go, a slap on the wrist, and there's no deportation, or any other type of ramification for these criminal activities. So it puts the rest of the population in danger. And then lastly, on to a positive report. We'll see how long this one is going to stay in place. But the Virginia House passes bill banning punishment for Christians who oppose gay marriage. This came out of the Christian Post the other week, where they passed this legislation that aims to prohibit government agencies from being able to punish individuals and businesses that act in accordance with their religious convictions on homosexuality and transgenderism. The bill's umbrella of protection is vast and would be protect the religious belief of any individual, corporation, partner, or association, and limited liability company, trust, joint venture, society, organization, or other legal or commercial entity, and any successor, representative, agent, agency, or instrumentality thereof. As a Christian wedding vendors in the state of Washington and Oregon have been fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for refusing to participate in same-sex weddings. Virginia's Government Non-Discrimination Act would effectively prevent such penalties, hallelujah, from being issued to those business owners who stand strong on their beliefs on marriage. The bill, as the article goes on to say, would protect colleges from government crackdown against their strict policies forbidding homosexuality and premarital cohabitation. The legislation would prohibit the state from issuing fines, taxes, or penalties against individuals and businesses who act according to their belief of traditional marriage or of their belief that men and women should be identified by their biological birth. And then speaking of transgenderism, a shocking story that came out. Again, I don't know how accurate this number is, but there's some said, according to the Australian news, that over 44,000 are transgendered here in Australia. So hard to believe that, but again, we see the push, the agenda of the government, but I like how the Virginia House is now protecting the citizens for people who might disagree with their policies. So there shouldn't be fines. You shouldn't be locked up or penalized because you disagree with a homosexual or transgender lifestyle or try to bake a cake for them. You shouldn't be fined or be forced to go out of business because you are not going to do that because of our religious beliefs. But as we see each week, more issues, more destruction that's going on morally and naturally and within wars and governments, etc. We see how we are living in the end times, in the last days, and we see all these things are just going so fast. Every day, more and more things are happening. So we need to be in prayer. We need to be in the Word. We need to be alert and watchful of what's happening around us. We need to be strong and courageous and do not compromise on our convictions. Amen? And that's it for this midweek update. Until next time, may the Lord radically and outrageously bless you.